What we do here is go back. What we do here is go back.
Hopefully that is, hopefully that's working, and hopefully we've got some audio, and hopefully it sounds okay. Who knows? Anyway, good evening everyone, Mike here, Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To. Over in the hot seat over there is young Kath, looking pretty over there. Oh, how'd you do it? Love you. Oh dear, sorry about that. Anyway, Mike here, Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To. It is Saturday the something of something, what was it, 14th of August or whatever it is these days, I don't know. Who cares? It'll be Christmas soon enough, and we'll know that because it'll be very bright, very sunny, and probably no snow or any other typical Christmassy stuff. Hopefully you're all having a great Saturday evening, morning, afternoon, wherever you are in the world. We are broadcasting here live from the southwest of the United Kingdom, so if you're a fellow Englander, as we were called, what was it we were called that? Someone said, oh, I always thought that Englanders were stupid, but you changed your mind. I think it was on Discord someone said that, but anyway, yeah, I think there was a compliment in there somewhere. So anyway, in tonight's stream, we'll be discussing the pros and the cons of saving money when building a PC. Well, actually it's going to relate to most things in life, to be completely honest with you. So normally when you're trying to build a PC, you go through, you spec out your parts, and then you realize that you're way over budget. So you start scaling things back. And in some instances, you can make some pretty drastic changes to bring the price down. But is it worthwhile doing that in the long run? Is it going to end up costing you more money as you go into the PC gaming and basically PC use, whether it's editing, gaming, whatever you're doing? Eventually you'll get to a point where you realize your PC can't do the things that you actually want it to. And that is when it ends up costing you more money. So we'll be discussing, is it worth spending a little bit more on certain components to begin with to save you the heartache after of having to upgrade and then potentially have to sell off your second-hand parts and losing money. Now this is extremely relevant to me this week. This week we've made various big mistakes. Well, not big mistakes, actually one of them was a huge mistake, but we've made various mistakes, and I thought, alright, me. I've made some pretty big mistakes.
It's always you.
Yeah, it's me when something goes right, and it's we when something goes wrong. But yeah, this week I personally have made some pretty awful mistakes, which, considering I have a YouTube channel and the whole point is to kind of educate people on how to do things properly, hopefully someone out there is going to learn from my mistakes, and I'll pass on some gems of wisdom which hopefully will save some people some money. Probably some of you have already noticed in the chat, I haven't even looked yet to be honest with you, but I could even, for those of you in the chat, some of you may have noticed I am wearing the rather fashionable Mike's Unboxing trucker cap, which is now available again back in stock on both the UK, the EU and the US and Canada stores. So if you want to pick yourself up some Mike's Unboxing merch, help support the channel and also block the sunshine from your eyes, which is obviously a good thing. You can head over to those sites. You can go to mikesunboxing.com, our website, https://mikesunboxing.com. If you go to there is tabs at the top, so you can go to the various things. If you click on the affiliates links, we've got all of our stores listed in there and also other things which you may wish to purchase to adorn your desks, etc. Also, you can, if you're watching this on YouTube right now, scroll down a little bit if you've not got it on full screen, and you'll see underneath there's a little carousel with some of our choice items, which also you can feel free to purchase to kit out your wardrobe, your desk, your pens, your toolbox, whatever you want to do. Anyway, that's enough of me shilling. Let's say hello to some of you that are joining us tonight on this glorious evening. And it is actually quite glorious here in the UK in the southwest. It's quite muggy. Bristol Balloon Fiesta is kind of on, I think, at the moment, sort of. There's a ton of balloons this morning and this evening, although it's pretty cloudy as well, so yeah, not particularly easy to see them, but the balloons are flying, so that means only one thing: it is summer here in the UK, when all the lunatics go out in those crazy balloons, attach basically a Bunsen burner to the bottom of some fabric, sit in a wicker basket and hope and pray that the wind is blowing in the right direction. These people are brave beyond belief. How they even do it, I do not know. I get scared going up a ladder, even if it's got supports and struts. Those lunatics go up in a wicker basket attached to a fire which is blowing into some fabric. These people are insane. Properly insane. Followed closely by skydivers. Anyway, we'll be staying firmly grounded hopefully in this evening's stream. Let's say hello to some of you that are in the stream. And actually we did get a super chat already. Let me take this actually off. It's getting a bit hot already in here. It also does double up as a useful fan. Kind of useful. Yeah, I quite like that hat. Quite good price. Yeah, we had a super chat come in from Ugly Bob. Thank you very much, Bob, for that. He said bang. And actually at the time when it came in, I did notice it because the light did come on. There was no banging to be seen or heard at that particular time. But thank you very much, Bob. So who we got in with us tonight? We have got Jad2016 says hi. Ugly Bob says good evening, everybody. Astro Inferno. This is related to obviously the title of the stream, saying, especially on power supplies, don't be afraid to go for a higher wattage on power supplies. And yes, we'll definitely be discussing power supplies because mistakes have been made there in the past, and hopefully they won't be made ever again. We will also be discussing motherboards as well, because there's been a big mistake made this week on the motherboard front, so that is totally on me. Totally on me. CAF had nothing to do with it, although I do blame Seam at Night partially. There was a deal which was posted in our Discord chat. We have got a dedicated room to bargains and discounts. And this particular motherboard, the Gigabyte A320M-H was posted, which some of you may have also seen on our community tab in the YouTube app. That board was £19.99. Yes, less than £20 for an AMD AM4 motherboard. Granted, it's how would you say, it is light on features, let's just say that. And during my testing this week is when I found out the kind of elephant in the room. But we'll discuss that a little bit later on anyway.
What was the first mistake you were talking about?
The first mistake was the camera.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was the biggest. The biggest mistake of the week was a camera. Again, if those of you that follow us in the community tab, you'll know that this week we purchased the wonderful Sony Alpha ZV-E10, which is Sony's latest release into the vlogging hemisphere of, well, I would call it an all-round camera, but it's not really an all-round camera. It's designed for vloggers. But yeah, that was a very big, expensive mistake. And if anyone out there, if you've maybe got your own YouTube channel, or maybe you're thinking about getting into photography or videography, and you're looking for a decent camera, don't buy a ZV-E10. Trust me on this. I've experienced many cameras over the last 4 or 5 years. Some have been good, some have been less good, some have been pretty awful. and the ZVE10 pretty much goes into the latter category of being what I can only say as junk. It really is junk. Some of you may have seen other reviewers who've had them and they've been doing blogs, etc. Yeah. There's some very, very selective editing going on there, I'm sure. Or I had a faulty camera. I don't know. All I know, it was bloody awful. But yeah, possibly we'll talk about that a little bit later if people are interested. But yeah, that was...
I did ask if this was done on the new camera.
That was nearly £800 worth of mistake right there. So still smarting a little bit on that one.
Refund on the way.
Yeah, it's gone back to Amazon, so we will get the money back eventually. Only to probably waste it on something else ridiculous. Engage England says, unfortunately, Mike, expensive hardware can be dodgy as well. I've had 2 Corsair PSUs blow up on me. Yeah, I guess the whole point of the stream is really, obviously any component can fail, regardless of how inexpensive or expensive it costs. Anything can fail at any moment. That is pretty much a given. But there's some parts you can purchase which just have inherent faults or inherent, I want to say, limitations, I suppose you'd say, which make them to the point of they're very, very limited in value. Again, we will discuss this in greater depth a little bit later. Fred Brown's with us also tonight. Says, didn't go cheap and got a pricey MSI 6600 XT Gaming for 768 Canadian rupees delivered. They delivered the 6600 XT to my front door when I was not home and left it where it could have been stolen by anyone. Yeah, that's Amazon for you. I'm guessing it was Amazon anyway. Who else we got with us tonight? We've got Milch Monster. Hi, it says, hi folks. Sir Soppy of Balls says, good evening. I love that name, that is great.
My phone auto predicts it.
Does it?
Mm.
Kath's got your name on auto predict. Should I be concerned?
As soon as I put Sir in, it comes up with suggested next words, soppy balls.
Kenny D says, hi everybody. Sky Stalker's with us from the United States of Canada. Says, hi all, should be in and out of stream. I am at the mercy of the cellular gods today. Well, hopefully you managed to get a stable connection. Paul Bakewell's with us as well. It says, hello all. Who else have we got with us? Angry Doge. The man of mystery, international man of mystery, Angry Doge is with us. How you doing, mate? And who else we got? Captain Meets Adventure says, don't go cheap like Prince Andrew. Probably the less said about Mr. Andrew, the best. Eddie says, hi everyone. How you doing, Eddie? Mark Barry says, evening all. Paul Lamont says, hi Kath. Smiley face. Mark Point says, hi. Aletta's with us as well. From the United States of Ohio. Ohio. Can't say it. Not many words to say, not many syllables, but still struggling. That is the, we've reached the high point of the stream. It's all downhill from here, everybody.
It's high, isn't it? With 2 O's on each side.
It is, yes. John Sullivan says, hi guys. Nick Barnes says, evening Mike and Kath. Trust everyone as well. Yeah, not doing too bad. I think I'm, after the kind of, the man flu, I think I'm probably,
Cold.
I'm about 90-ish%, 93% maybe. Not totally there, but certainly a lot better than I was. Sky Stalker says, music. Yes, we went to the older music. Mark Point's having a bad day. Oh dear, that doesn't sound good. James Miscellaneous says, wake up Aletta. James is almost close enough. Just go over there and knock on the door. Although, beware of dogs and guns. Matthew Day says, new merch. Yes, shield circuits have fully been activated, Bob. Exactly right. There are many items of merch. The merch store is actually, I think I'm quite proud of it. I'm not too sure if I am or not. It'd be nice to expand a bit. The teddy bears are still out of stock. Unbelievable.
They must be made in the same places as the...
Yeah, they come from the same place as processors. I think they actually come from TSMC. Oracle Man 1 says front panel connectors. Oh, that's related to Mark Point, I'm guessing. Matt Games says hi. Who else we got? Blackhound Roy says yo yo. Captain Me's Adventure says, can you sell second-hand limbs? Not entirely sure. Probably not legally. Bob says, Kath, have you got your new kitten yet? No. Bob? No. Just no. Jar 2016 says, Mike looks American with that hat. It is an American trucker cap, so it's doing its job. Looking down. Riley's with us as well. How you doing? Oh dear, excuse me. Kieran Atkinson's here also. Mark Point. Eddie. Angry Doe says, I'm good, thank you. How are you? Yeah, not too bad. I'm coughing now. I'm going to have a drink. What? Something went actually down the wrong way. Do you want to knock over all the boxes of the very expensive computer equipment?
Welly Bob wants to keep watching to find out more t-shirt.
Oh, that's a good idea. Oh God, I scrolled too far. No, there we are. Welly Bob says, good evening all. Anyway, forgot what time it was. Welly Bob, Kath wants to say thank you. Her computer is currently running far more efficiently due to the Ryzen 5 2600 processor, which you kindly bequeath us. It has actually gone to really good use, so Kath's video editing is on point now, and she's using roughly about 35 watts of less power every day for 24 hours most of the day. And there's a super chat coming from, who's that from? That's from Uggs. Sorry, Uggs. Oh God, I'm pressing all the wrong buttons here.
Probably for the best.
It's probably for the best. What did he say? A fiver towards your new kitten, Kath. It's going to happen. I am, right. Bob, we can fall out.
I thought Bob was sending it for you to review.
Bob, don't, no. Let's not go there. Let's get away from the subject of kittens and cats, etc. Aletta says that's Ohio, lol. Oh yeah, that's the one. James Mustaine says, I'm the proud owner of 0 Corsair parts. Is it only me? This is going to be probably detrimental to the channel, but I'm going to say it anyway. Is it only me that thinks that Corsair stuff is a little bit overrated? I appreciate the fact that it's a very inclusive kind of thing. I don't know, is it just too much, is it too expensive for what it is? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. I was having a little bit of a discussion with somebody today about the Corsair 220T, which we reviewed ages ago, and I didn't like it. In a lot of ways, it was a good case, but there was a few things about it which just were overlooked, and it just made it into a chore to work with. They have actually released a much cheaper version, a variant of it. It appears, it's been on Amazon and stuff like that for about 45 quid. With the 3 Corsair SP120 RGB fans and the cheapo controller for the RGB, which does make it actually a very viable option. But I don't know, there's something about Corsair that I just, maybe it's because I've had far too many bad experiences with LPX. Because LPX RAM, there's so many versions of LPX, and if you buy it second hand, you basically don't know what you're getting, whether it's the Intel LPX, whether it's the AMD enhanced LPX. It's literally a minefield out there. I've had a few problems with them. Bob's Corsair headset, actually, the HS70 Pro, that was actually really good. That was impressive. I really did enjoy trying those out. They did sound amazing.
They feel on top of your head with that suede stuff.
They're pretty good. They were pretty good. Dave Pring says, purchased a Sahara P35 case after your review. Very happy. Glad to hear it. Corsair cases, actually, they're pretty good. Although, I think at the moment, because of the way that the PC industry is going, there's so many cases which are being reduced in price, and there's so many new designs coming on the market at a very, very good price point, that the case market is an absolute nightmare. And there's companies like Sahara, which traditionally were in that kind of bargain basement section where they did really good value for money. Now you've got things like obviously GameMax, Neutron Labs, you've got First Player Gaming, Ions especially, which are all just pushing out all these great design cases now, for ridiculously low amounts of money. And I think companies like, I would say specifically GameMax and Sahara, really need to be kind of looking at the other companies clipping at their heels, because they're going to go from being the kind of the go-to budget brands to being the kind of has-beens, or also running. Yeah, it's interesting. The PC case market is definitely hotting up. I think it's because people aren't building PCs at the moment. There's a ton of inventory in the whole kind of marketplace, and they just need to clear it all because people just aren't buying it. And they think by making cases super cheap, people will buy them and then be like, oh, I know, I need to build a system. And hopefully that will kind of encourage people to buy stuff. Does seem like it's going that way. Ultimate Tech Hub says Mike's cat unboxing coming soon. Imagine that. It's bad enough getting cut fingers trying to remove processor coolers, let alone angry kittens with claws like needles. Yeah, that wouldn't be good. Billy K says I only got Corsair RAM for that sweet RGB. Hey, when it comes to RGB, there aren't many that do it better than V-Color. And I'm not saying that because they sent us the RAM. I think I bought those. Is that the ones I bought? It might be the ones I bought. I bought loads of their stuff and they've sent me some stuff, so yeah. I think V-Color do a particularly good job of their RGB RAM. I will honestly say. Very good. Bloodhound Roy says buying a brand versus buying quality. That is definitely something that we all need to take into consideration, because there's quite a lot of times where there may be a product from a specific company, I'm not going to mention any names because I guess they're all guilty of it in some respects, where a brand will put their name to something which isn't necessarily up to their usual standards. Probably one case manufacturer I would say is guilty of that would be Lian Li. The Lian Li 215 was basically a design which they picked up and stuck their badge on effectively. And that has had a few negatives, especially things like the fans, the controller, etc., which are kind of like the key selling points of that case. That was really one of those things where they cheaped out a little bit. Now, it did good because obviously it allowed Lian Li to then be in the hands of other people that wouldn't normally be able to afford Lian Li cases because they're normally relatively expensive. But does it always do good for the brand to kind of cheap out on stuff just to maybe branch into other markets? I don't know. I'm not too sure. I don't know whether it actually harms the brand in the long run. That's probably not the best way of kind of explaining that. I suppose Kingston would be probably another one, and XPG. XPG have had a history of releasing some pretty decent products, especially some of their SSDs, but they've actually done the kind of bait and switch thing like Kingston did before them, and obviously other companies have as well, where they've got a product that's been released, the reviewers have taken it on board, it's reviewed very well, and then a few months later down the line they've changed the specification of the product using cheaper or more cost-effective materials, and the performance has dropped and the quality has dropped. Again, they're all trying to do what we are trying to do, which is save money wherever we can, but sometimes saving that money does have a profoundly negative effect on reliability, stability, and then ultimately it tarnishes the brand name. So yeah, it's definitely something we need to keep an eye on, I think. Rick says, I have a Corsair 275R Airflow. Yeah, I had the 465, which was a really nice case. I like that one a lot. It was a good case. Mark Point says, yeah, my Dominator won't set to the rated speed because it's for Intel when I have a Ryzen CPU. Yeah, I think Corsair RAM, possibly, I don't know whether it's because they've got such a huge market share and there's just literally so much of it out there, but Corsair, when it comes to memory, it just keeps on cropping up. I would say probably, I don't know, it's difficult to quantify, but it's definitely a large segment of people have issues with Corsair RAM, and myself included. Aletta says, RGB on RAM, no thanks.
Hey, baby.
James Miscellaneous says, speaking to Welly Bob, I've always used Patriot memory, but I think I'm going to not be buying them anymore as they participated in the NVMe drive debacle. It does happen. It does happen, sadly. Welly Bob says, I ended up buying some Crucial 1TB NVMe M.2 drives this week, 59 quid. Yeah, the Crucial P2s, I think it was, were on sale this week here in the UK for £59 for a 1TB NVMe, which is kind of dangerously close to the prices that things like Tenzo and TC Sunbao were doing drives for probably about this time last year. So to have a brand such as... oh God, who is it? Where is it? Where is it? Da, da, da. I can't see. Crucial. So for a brand like Crucial to do them, they are QLC drives, so they're not as good as a TLC drive, but for the money, I don't think you can go too far wrong. And there is Flame the Cat. He is very ginger and massive, and if you look at him in the eye, he will attack you. It's that eye-to-eye contact. As soon as you get eye-to-eye contact,
His pupils get bigger.
his pupils dilate, and that's it.
Claws come out.
Angry cat. Junior Thomas says, never cheap out on PSUs. Had one smoke up already. An Asa Bronze PSU. Bad times. James Miscellaneous says, I love RGB on my RAM. Zizal says, hey, how you doing? Viper Gaming, best PSU under £30, under $30. I'm not too sure when it comes to dollars. The conversion rate, and also with dollars, I always get confused whether or not it's Canadian dollars, Indian dollars, or US dollars, whatever. So it's difficult to say because they all have very, very different kind of conversion rates. And being that I'm not in the US, it's very difficult for me to kind of quantify that. Generally for us here in the UK, if you're looking for a PSU under £30, really, actually, it's probably one of these ones here, which is the Aerocool Cylon. It's actually not a bad little PSU. I've used it for quite a lot of testing, and it just keeps on going.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Picked up the,
So that's not too bad.
graphics card.
Yes, because behind the graphics card. Danielle Emberley says, before buying the Corsair RM5 750X, I did a check on the reviews on Tom's Hardware. Seems a lot of these name brands do not make power supplies and source models from different manufacturers. Yeah, definitely that is something which is very, very common. Corsair themselves, I don't believe they actually make, I don't think they make any of their power supplies. I think all of them are outsourced. Same is with Be Quiet, EVGA, what are the brands? They're Cooler Master. I don't think they make, they might make a couple. I think one of the few that do make their own, I'm trying to think now, CWT. CWT are a OEM of power supplies, and they actually sell retail as well. So they're one of the few that actually make their own, but that's because they kind of came into the market after making them for everybody else. So, and Great Wall Technology as well. There's Channelwell Technology and Channelwell and Greatwell, and there's another one, Gold Sunflower as well. There's a few of them, but it's all kind of make them for essentially everybody else. Willie Bob says, yes, the P2 is worth 60 quid. Not the best NVMe, like Mike said, but the value is brilliant. Yeah, definitely 60 quid. Like, did I have got one up there? No, I didn't. I did have a TC Sunbao drive, an NVMe. I'm not even sure where I put it in. Might even be in Cap's computer. It's in something somewhere here. It might be that one. I don't know. Yes, I did anyway. I did buy one of the TC Sunbao drives, and that was about the same price. I think it's 62, so a little bit more expensive, but yeah, value for money wise, £60 for an NVMe, you can't go wrong. Matthew Day says there's also some US brands like Rosewheel. Yeah, that's definitely true. Rosewheel is one of those brands as well where they do some really decent stuff, but then also they got their really, really budget range, which are kind of like case-wise, do some very, very cheap cases. G Waz says, Mike, I've got the Citadel Mesh RGB case. It's great, but I'm having RGB issues. When I turn the PC on, the RGB doesn't always come on. Also, sometimes it changes presets on its own. Any ideas? I'm not too sure. The Citadel Mesh has got a remote control, so potentially it could be being affected by other people's remote controls or RF interference. Probably one of those things best if you jump in on one of our Discord chats at some point, and we'll go through, make sure everything's connected, check out your settings, all that kind of stuff. From Kath spinning round in her chair as quickly as she just did, I'm pretty sure she just put a link to our Discord, so if you want to join in, you can do there. And then we can discuss it in more depth. Kenny D says, actually, Kenny D, thank you. Thank you for saying what you've just said. I do appreciate that, because it is very, very true. Kenny D says, not everyone can budget $100 on a PSU, especially on a low budget. That is exactly my thoughts on it. Exactly my thoughts. Now, I've got I've got about 5 or 6 PCs here, and I don't think that any of them have got spectacular PSUs. Yet they're on pretty much, not 24/7, but they're on for a decent amount of time every day. Almost every single day of the year, unless we're ill or it's Christmas Day or something, we're having a day off. But generally the PCs are on pretty much all day. So from the moment when we wake up, so I don't know, maybe 8, 9 o'clock or whatever, until midnight or gone, the PCs are on. And they are relatively inexpensive PSUs. The one in my own main PC for video editing is a Silverstone Strider 650 watt gold, I think, which is probably one of the better PSUs in the house. That's been absolutely fine. The one in the PC behind me, I'm pretty sure, is a Corsair TX 650M, I want to say. A mid-range-ish PSU. Kath's PC probably is the one that does the best. And that has just got a GameMax GP 500 watt in there, which is like I think it's just about a bronze. But that thing's been absolutely fine as well. It's not had any issues, and it's been running. Thank you. It's been running pretty much non-stop since I bought the power supply, which I think it's got to be getting on for nearly 2 years in there, and it's not skipped a beat. It's been absolutely fine. And it had the Ryzen 7 1700X in there, so that's a pretty heavy-duty processor. She's doing video editing on it. Graphics card is RX 480, so again, not the most efficient of graphics cards, so it's pulling a lot of power. And for a 500 watt power supply, you'd think really it should have gone pop by now, especially with like best part of 100 tabs open in various browsers. 24/7. Pretty much all the time, yeah. So the PC's under a lot of work, and it's been absolutely fine. But like always, it's gonna be one of those things. You could sell 20 of those GP 500 power supplies, and you might not get a single failure rate. It's always luck of the draw. It's down to manufacturing. Somebody actually pointed out this week on our GameMax Rampage video, the 850 watt bronze, which is a bit of a bizarre power supply. I still don't quite understand that power supply, why it exists, but it does. But someone pointed out that there have been some models where they've actually, the PCI Express port on the back for the modular section has actually been installed upside down. Now, technically you can't connect the cable because the plug part, or the clasp bit that goes on the top, you physically can't push in. So it's not going to cause any damage because you can't use it. It's just going to be frustrating because it has to go back. But that comes down to the same thing. All things are manufactured either by a robot. Sometimes there's a human involved in the process as well. Maybe they've loaded up the machine with the connectors around the wrong way, or whatever the case may be. These things do happen, and you do get issues, manufacturing issues. Maybe they put the wrong capacitor in. Maybe it's not been soldered correctly. Or potentially they've just used really cheap parts which they shouldn't be using, like we saw in Gamers Nexus, who's been doing some in-depth testing on power supplies which were bundled with graphics cards over in the US from, I believe it was Newegg. I'm not entirely sure, I think it was Newegg. But those power supplies really weren't designed to go with the components they're sold with, which is where it comes back to the whole point of what this stream is supposed to be about, which is spending money in the right places. Now, this week, as you can probably see, I've got some stuff on the desk here. Maybe it's actually probably best if I go through and explain some of these bits on the table and why they're actually there. And there is actually a good reason for it. It's not just because I've got a load of stuff and I can't be arsed to put it on the shelf. There is actually genuine reasons why these are here, because these are key illustrations of why it is sometimes beneficial, if you can, to spend slightly more money in certain areas to prevent you having to spend money again a little bit later on. Let's put got my cup somewhere. There we go. So what should we start with? Let's start with the power supplies because that is quite a relevant one. We'll get rid of some of this stuff. Right, 2 power supplies, as you can probably see. Hopefully they're in the right way, kind of. So, in this side we've got the Cylon 750 watt. This is an 80 watt plus, bronze rated, I believe. Is it bronze? No, it might even just be a white one actually. Where's the rating on this? So yeah, because this is sold in the EU, the ratings are slightly different. So I think this is kind of a white, maybe a bronze at best. 700 watt power supply, clearly from the actual outputs, which I believe are, so it's 53 amps on the 12 volt rail. So 53 times 12 is 636.
Are you 100% this time?
Yeah, kind of almost 100%. Yeah, 100. Yeah, 130. No, yeah, 636 watts. So clearly that's not a 700 watt power supply. Although in terms of how power supplies are rated, because you've got the 5 volt rail and 3.5 rail, 3.3 rail rather, they kind of add it together and fudge it to the nearest high number. This isn't a bad power supply, but depending on what you're going to be using it with, potentially it might be worth spending a little bit more money. These retail anywhere around about £30. Then another option is this. This is the EVGA 550B5. This is only a 550 watt power supply, but it is bronze rated. This has an inherently better kind of feature set, and also the quality is better. If you took it apart, looked at the capacitors, they both use to some extent Japanese main TK caps, which is basically your main one. But the way this all built, put together, the resistors, blah, 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 etc. Essentially, this is a better power supply. It is about 10 to 15 pounds more expensive. But if you were to put the Cylon 700 watt, well, let's say it's the same. Say it's the Cylon 550 against the EVGA 550. If you put this into a system which is going to be drawing somewhere in the region of about 400, maybe 450 watts, this is going to not do as well as the EVGA one because of the quality and the way that it's going to handle the current. So with the lower rated Cylon, there is a potential you may get things like processor throttling, because possibly the wire gauge is a little bit less on here than what it is on here, so you can't get the current through the wires. That also is a very, very common trick for power supply manufacturers. What they'll do, they will get a power supply, they will send it off to ClearPlus for getting rating and certificates, and they'll often send it, especially modular ones, they'll send it with better modular cables, maybe a slightly thicker cable, whatever, just so it does better in testing. Then when it comes to actually selling it, they will sometimes get a different supplier for the cabling because that's all they could get, leaving you with a slightly inferior product compared with the original rating. Obviously, for things like EVGA and other well-known brands, that is going to be less of a thing because they haven't got all their kind of eggs in one basket. EVGA obviously make graphics cards, power supplies, all sorts of things. Herical on the other side, they do make a wide range of things, but they're at a different part of the market. These are kind of like the budget basement kind of crowd pleasers, whereas EVGA goes for the people that are kind of, they know what they're doing, they know quality, they want something which is going to be slightly longer lasting. So in this instance, if you're using a system which is slightly getting closer to the rating, it will make sense to spend a little bit more money due to things like stability and all that stuff. Now obviously this is a very, very loose kind of scenario because you cannot specifically quantify that if you had two identical systems running exactly the same hardware and software and peripherals, that one is going to do significantly better than the other. Again, it's down to luck of the draw, the manufacturing process, etc., etc. But hopefully this is kind of illustrating the fact that spending a little bit of extra money might get you a better product. Now, obviously the warranty for this is going to be better. So I believe this has got a 3 or 5 year warranty, whereas the Aerocool is, I believe it's down to a year, possibly 2 if you're in the EU. because of the way the laws work. But essentially, you've got a better warranty on this. So if a manufacturer is going to give you a slightly better warranty, they're obviously going to be possibly slightly more confident in their product, which generally is a good sign. Obviously, the more you spend, you get a better warranty, maybe a 5-year, 10 years, quite common on some of the higher end power supplies altogether. So spending a little bit of money on a power supply does make sense if you can, and if it is required. Obviously, if you're just building a system with like a Ryzen 3 2200G and you're using it as a kind of office workhorse, there's no point. There really isn't a point, because you're not going to be taxing the power supply, in which case something like this is going to be absolutely fine. So in that instance, you're probably better off spending money on possibly a better motherboard, a better case, or a couple of extra fans to keep it cool, that kind of thing. So it's all about really looking at what your use case scenario is, what you're doing, what the wattage is likely to be drawn, and what the PC's doing. Again, if you're just opening a couple of internet tabs, maybe you're running some software for your business, Office 365, that kind of thing, you're never going to be really stressing out your power supply. So there's no real point in spending a lot of money on an expensive power supply just because it's a better power supply. That makes no sense at all. And obviously the money could be possibly spent better elsewhere. Am I getting my point through? Is this making sense? Obviously, if you're on the other end of the spectrum and maybe you're like us and you're trying to create content, or maybe you're a gamer and basically you're gaming kind of 6 hours a day or more and you're pushing your system to the limits, maybe you've got a little bit of overclock going on in your system, then yes, clearly then it makes sense to spend a little bit more money, get a power supply which is going to handle those peaks and troughs better. Buy the power supply that is suitable for the system. I get a lot of people on the comments, especially when we review these cheaper power supplies, and they turn around and say, that's junk, you can't use it, it'll catch on fire, it'll blow up. Anyone will tell you that either one of these power supplies can catch on fire, either one can blow up. Like we had earlier on in the comments, that I can't remember who it was now, they said I think it was Junior, said he bought an expensive power supply and it still blew up. So there's no guarantee that by spending more, you are inherently getting a power supply which won't catch on fire or won't blow up or won't blue screen your system. It's luck of the draw, it really is. But this, I think, power supply wise is, I would say, possibly one of the lesser of all of the things that you'd look at on a system and think, right, where can I save money? Does this make sense for me? I think these are areas where you can definitely save money. It will most likely make sense. Not in all cases, but in a lot of cases, yes, it will. Especially if you're on a very tight budget. Think of it in this way. If you're building a system, the price difference between these two power supplies is 20 quid, for argument's sake. You're building a system for an office PC, you're then confronted with the choice of either a Ryzen 3000G or a 2200G, which about £20 difference between the price. Now clearly having a 2-core 4-thread versus a 4-thread, essentially a kind of a better processor, in the long run that is going to serve you better. You're going to be able to work faster, you're going to be able to have more tabs open, etc, etc. You've got better onboard graphics, so if you do happen to have to play some games or you do have to do some work in an application which requires graphical processing power, saving £20 on a power supply but investing it into the CPU to give you a better overall experience, that in my opinion, and it is just my opinion, is the better way of doing it. Anyway, that is my where I am with power supplies. I'm really interested to hear what you guys are thinking about that, and I'm going to have a look in the comments there. James Miscellaneous said, Mike, I'll be completely honest, I zoned out when you were talking about those PSUs. I have an OCD for efficiency and ignore bronze rated power supplies. That is, again, something else to be taken into consideration. Are you into efficiency for your PC? Is that the be all and end all? If efficiency is one of those things which you put super high on your list of priorities for your PC, then obviously, yeah, spend your budget, get a gold rated power supply. It will save you money eventually somewhere down the line. In theory, the difference between a bronze rated, a silver, a gold and a titanium are pretty much less than 5%, well, maybe 10%. So there isn't a great deal, but if you've got your PC on, it's 24/7, you've got it on for a year or a couple of years, then yeah, eventually you're going to save money and the efficiency is definitely going to come into effect. if you're obviously with a bigger system, with a higher draw, maybe you're using 700 watts, 600 watts, then obviously you're going to get your savings back much quicker than a PC which is drawing maybe 200 watts. So yeah, I totally understand where you're coming from, and yeah, efficiency, especially for those of you in America, because obviously California with their pretty strict rules on efficiency and stuff, obviously whatever happens in California generally kind of then spreads out across the states, and then what the states get, we generally get. So there will be a point where power supplies are going to be mandated to be as efficient as physically possible, or you may pay a tax premium for having inefficient parts, which, yeah, that is something to also look into the equation. Depending when it's going to happen, if you've got a power supply with a 2-year warranty, maybe in 2 years you're going to change your PC anyway, so is that such a big deal? I don't know. But yeah, certainly is something to worth considering, definitely. Danny Boy says, Thermaltake Tough Power 850 watts. I just bought a second one. I have the other 850 Tough Power for 14 years. Wow, that is impressive. That genuinely is impressive. I think actually there's a lot of people out there who've probably got power supplies which they've had for donkey's years. Literally, like, best part of a decade. I'm pretty sure that if I look around here, there's bound to be a power supply which I've had or I've used. In fact, actually, there was the silver one that I used for a lot of testing. That actually came from a PC, which was kind of circa 2001, maybe 2002. So it's from an old Pentium 4 system, and that thing's still going. And I use that. I'm not exactly careful with it. It just gets lobbed into a. Actually, I'm wondering if it's got a date stamp on it. So this is, most of you have seen this at some point or other on the channel. This is Old Faithful. So I use this deliberately because it's a super, super good contrast against a black PC basement. So you can see how much room you've got for power supplies. And also you can see from the ketchup and mustard cabling where the cables go and where they pass through, etc. So I do love using this power supply. This is actually, I think it's only maybe a 400 watt at best, maybe even less than that. In fact, actually, it hasn't got any markings on it at all, apart from a 3006, which I believe this came from an old Gateway PC from around about 2001, 2002. It's got one SATA connection on it, so that gives you some idea of how old it is. But it does actually support active PFC, which is the power faction correction, so to kind of remove ripples and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, this thing must be, it's got to be getting on 20 years old. Doesn't get used every day, but it's still going. It hasn't gone pop yet. And although having said that, every now and then when I plug in a power cable to that on my extension lead, it does make my monitor turn off. So yeah.
Have you got any bit of kit that you can measure how much power it takes? I have got a plug. Yeah, I have. Someone asked if I've got a device where I can work out how much power things take. Yes, I have got a power plug which I can plug in, and it then on the smartphone will tell me how many watts things are using. So that, it is something which I've considered, but to me personally, this is just for me, obviously everyone's different. Our energy prices in the UK are actually reasonably good. Our electricity bill is quite low. So for me, the difference between a super efficient power supply and a not very efficient power supply, it's pence. So it's not one of those things which I really prioritise. I understand that in some countries, obviously, power supplies and energy usage is very expensive. So certainly that does come into it there. Maybe it's something I should look at more. Matthew Day says, a true fire starter, 500 watts, $14.99 on eBay. Just don't do it to your components. No, this is true. This is true. Oh, what was that? Someone said, a cheap power supply is like being revived by two hamsters running like hell charging a AAA battery. Your rig deserves better. Jim, you're absolutely right. And again, it does go down to what you're using it for. If it's just a really low-end system, 3000G, 8 gigs of RAM on an ITX board, just running a Plex media server, or just actually receiving Plex information, is probably going to be drawing less than 100 watts from the wall for the whole system. So in that case, is it really worth getting a high-end power supply for that kind of system? I don't know. I don't think it is, because it's not even the cheapest of the Cylons, the 400 watt they do. It's only using a quarter of the power, which, yeah, it's so low into what it can actually be pushed to. Would you bother spending 60, 70 pounds on a EVGA 550 watt gold power supply for that kind of rig? I don't think it makes sense. But yeah, obviously for your own systems, you are more than welcome to do whatever you want. That's what this is all about. Jesus, great name. As a confessed cheap bastard, I must say that you must handle the risk. Yeah, I guess that is ultimately what it comes down to as well. There are risks associated with using a cheaper power supply. There is arguably a higher risk of something going wrong or it just not working as intended. It's a managed risk. Hugh Luttrell says, how do I find out if power supply has 8+4 motherboard power for my test bench? Normally you want to be looking for 2 times EPS connectors. If it on the power supply listing, just look for EPS times 2 or EPS 8-pin times 2. Quite often there'll be an EPS 8-pin and a EPS 4+4 pin on some of the more modern power supplies. Patrick LaBelle says, hi Mike, Kath and chat. How you doing, Patrick? And the Freckle Puny says, I have branded and cheaper no branded. I have branded and cheaper no branded PSUs fail. Yes, yeah, my point exactly. All power supplies have the potential for failure. Some brands more so than others, as Steve from Gamers Nexus found out. Jim Beans says, I'm using a Corsair T600M from about 2013, love it. And Droner says, my AX 860 ATX power supply, 860 watt plus rated platinum certified, has lasted 10 years. Yeah. James Miscellaneous says, you're 100% correct with your rebuttal, Mike. I agree with you. When PSUs are strictly 12 volt, I wonder if the quality will go up across the board. Hopefully. That would be a really good thing to see. I'm not too sure. The current kind of the 12 volt XO standard, I'm not keen on the way that it all connects to the motherboard, as in you have your 12 volt directly into the motherboard, then if you need to use 3.3 or 5 volt peripherals, they then have a plug coming out of the motherboard. I'm not overly keen on the way that works. It'll be a difficult learning curve, I think, to actually get things to work correctly. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see. In theory, if everything's running at 12 volts, then it should be more efficient. I think if you then add other drives and other peripherals which are using the 5 volt and 3.3 rail, which are coming from the motherboard, is then the onus is on the manufacturer of the motherboard to make sure that the conversion rates are efficient, which, as we know, motherboard manufacturers have never been the best at doing things like that. So, and there's going to be obviously good manufacturers, there's going to be reasonable manufacturers, and there's going to be downright awful ones. So I would argue a company such as ASRock probably won't have the best power correction going from 12 volt and dropping down, as a wild guess, going by what their VRMs are generally like. Whereas possibly a board like ASUS and MSI, maybe more premium components possibly, especially seeing that obviously their VRM technology is generally quite good, and more times not actually quite superior to other models. Anyway, yeah, it seems that you're all pretty happy with your power supply, so that is good. James Miscellaneous, electric is better here too. Glad I left New Jersey where you must pay to breathe air. Harsh but fair, sign of the things to come. Christopher Butt says, had a few PSU blow over the years, never took out any components, lucky though. Kim says, check out Steve's review of Gigabyte's power supplies. Yeah, that is pretty much what we're referring to. Gigabyte, I don't know what's going on with Gigabyte. They've really seem to have lost the plot recently. They really have. And actually, that's a very good segue into the next part of where you should and where you shouldn't save money on your PC build. So this is a mistake that I've made this week. I'll put my hands up. I solemnly swear I will never do this again until next time. it's obviously going to happen. We'll talk about the graphics card situation at the very end, but this is going to be a very, very good illustration of why you shouldn't cheap out on your motherboard. So we've got two motherboards here, as you can possibly already see. It's not rocket science. So one of which is the MSI B450M Mortar Max, and this one is, and this one I was looking on there. This one is Gigabyte's A320M-H. Now clearly, very different chipsets, very different target audience for both of these boards. But when people are speccing a PC, when OEMs are building PCs, there's a tendency to go for this rather than something like this. Because, obviously, when these boards first came out, this kind of thing, the Mortar Max B450M, you'd be looking somewhere between £80 and £100 here in the UK, sometimes slightly more, but I'm giving you a ballpark figure. Whereas this board, when it first came out in the UK, you're looking about £45, £50. So already there's like a deficit of around about £30 or so. So if you're a system builder, both of these boards will take essentially pretty much the same processors. There's a few obvious caveats. This has got better VRMs and will take more RAM. This will take 4 sticks, this will take 2. But if you're a system builder and you want to put an advert up, PC, blah, 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 16 gigs of RAM, Windows installed, blah, blah, plays Fortnite. Most people, obviously not you people, because you're watching this video, I would assume that most of you are pretty well versed in how PCs are built and what goes in them, etc. So obviously I'm not saying this to you specifically, but maybe if you're watching this stream, you just found Mike's Unboxing for the first time and you're wondering what the hell is he blithering on about, then hopefully it's maybe something of a learning thing for you. So this is what I would consider a bad board. This I would consider a good board. At the moment in the UK, this is £20 and these can go for about £36. We've seen them on offer this week, again, in the deals section on our Discord if you want to join up. New deals every single day, thanks to Seamanite and all the others, Ugly Bob, Skystalker, etc, etc. Many, many others all contributing. Awesome. Thank you all so much. But this board, I did some testing this week because I just bought it. I thought 20 quid for a motherboard. Come on, it's got to be worth 20 quid.
Simon Cleary bought nearly all the other things you had on the table.
In actual fact, this particular board, what I said earlier, this really does come into effect now. So if you're building a system, if you're building a general purpose office PC, it's just going to be running, again, an APU, maybe a low-end Ryzen 3 1200, Ryzen 3 3100, that sort of thing. This is going to be fine. It will get the job done. It's limited on features. You're not going to have things like RGB. You've only got one M.2 slot. You've only got 2 RAM slots. You're going to be limited on memory speeds, etc. It probably tops out 3200 DDR speed. So you have to take those things into consideration. That is going to be something which will be a limiting factor. But the real limiting factor of this is going forward. So say for instance you build your OEM built system or your cheapest chips PC, it's got one of these in there, it comes with a crappy processor to start with or something pretty low end, and you get to the point where a couple of months in, your PC's not quite doing what you want it to, so you think, right, let's have a look inside the wallet, see what we got and what can we get as an upgrade. So most people probably look for a processor as one of the first upgrades. Generally it's going to be processor or GPU. Those are the two things that most people will tend to look at to improve general overall performance. So whether you're working, obviously processor, if you're gaming, graphics card, makes a lot of sense. Either one of those upgrades on this board potentially causes catastrophic failure or almost catastrophic failure. So I did some testing with this with various processors and I ended up going with the Ryzen 7 1700X, which is an 8-core 16-thread processor from 2000 and whatever. It's an older processor, but it's a 95 watt part. It will boost up higher than that. And I wanted to see how this would actually fare, because a lot of people say, don't buy these boards. It's fine for low-end processors, but if you put something a bit heavier in there, it isn't good. And I proved that categorically. With the 1700X in here, this thing, running things like Cinebench, thermal throttles like you would not believe. The VRM temperatures went absolutely sky high and there was definite thermal throttling, which is something which with the same processor was never seen, not once, on this board. So then it comes back to, okay, I'm building my PC, I have got a hard, fast budget. Where do I save my money? So going back to what I said about the power supplies, because a power supply kind of is replaceable to some extent, and again, depending on what sort of system you're building, etc., these may or may not work out. But in that particular instance, if I had to choose between those two power supplies and these two boards, if I had a certain budget, I would, without a shadow of a doubt, go with the Cylon 700 watt and the B450 Mortar Max, then what I would go with the EVGA 550 watt and the A320M. Because this board has limitations. This board, not so much. It does have some, I'll be honest, but realistically you can get pretty much any processor you want, put it on here, it will run. It may not run it to the best of its ability, but it's unlikely it's going to thermal throttle. These have got some really good VRMs, the power management is pretty decent. Whereas this is built to obviously a price. If they can sell it for £20, how much do you think it costs to make? The manufacturer, you would hope, is making at least something on it. They're not selling, well, they might be selling it at a loss, you never know. It's unlikely, most places won't. It's an old board, it is end of line, and I actually said that in my review. This is it. A320 is kind of at the end of the road. You can
How
put,
much was it when it came out?
I think it was about £45–50 when it first came out. So it's less than half price. It is a clearance type board, but as you can see, it's coming in the new MSI, the new Freudian slip. It's coming in the new Gigabyte packaging. So it's not as if these have been in the back of somebody's warehouse somewhere and they just like, right, well, we just found a pallet of these, we need to sell them off quickly. This is built kind of this year. It's got Ryzen 3000 series ready, so that kind of dates it to some extent, the fact that it's actually got that BIOS on there already. The BIOS for this board, I think, was dated as May of this year. So that gives you some idea of the production time scale. It's been made this year, effectively. So they're still making them. But my point of saving money where it makes sense. If there's any possibility that you're thinking of doing an upgrade at some point in the very near or mid-term future, doing what I said earlier, getting a decent power supply, like a gold-rated power supply, and one of these, I think personally is a bad idea. Even with lower end processors like quad cores with 8 threads, potentially you could still see a bit of thermal throttling in some instances. Now, I ran this as an open air test bench, doing the best I could with it, but yeah, it was throttling hard. It really was. Dropping down from kind of best part of like 3.5 gigahertz down to 2.9, 2.7 in some cases. So it actually makes work hard. And you could tell because it was jittering and stumbling and all that kind of stuff. And if you're buying one of these and you're getting games and you're getting lag spikes or that kind of stuff, this is what's probably causing it. The fact that the VRMs just can't cope, it's not managing the power, and it's thermally throttling either the graphics card or the processor and giving you those lag spikes. So these are things which you need to take into consideration. Your power supply is unlikely to give you lag spikes unless you're pushing it right to the very end of the limit. So yeah, this was this week's big mistake. 20 quid. Granted, like I said before, if you're pairing it with possibly a Ryzen 5 2600 or something lower, yeah, this is going to be absolutely fine. But if you're upgrading something a little bit newer, a little bit faster, this is definitely going to cause you more problems than this with a crap power supply. So hopefully that is giving you some other food for thought, and maybe you can now see my kind of thought process behind this. I do try to go for value for money, not necessarily all out speed or efficiency, but when it comes to value for money, I think with those two boards, the B450M at £36 against the A320M-H for 20 quid, even if you don't have to kind of order a pizza for the week, save the money, spend a little bit extra on the motherboard, because that is money definitely well spent, 100%. I better acknowledge, yeah, and you won't have heartburn. Who was the David Aitken, £2, thank you. Drop in for quick. Big love to the Mub crew. Thank you, David. Appreciate that. That's £2 towards the upgraded A320M.
AKA kitten.
AKA No, Kath, you're not having a kitten.
Curly haired kitten.
No. So James Brock says, "Buy cheap, pay dear." Yeah, exactly. That's what you could from the thumbnail and the video title. That is essentially what it's about. If you really do cheap out on stuff, it's going to bite you in the balls. It really is. Power motherboard wise, potentially that is a recipe for disaster, especially if you're someone who builds and sells PCs from home and you just do it as like a hobby, and your cousin Johnny comes round and it's like, oh, I want a gaming PC, but I've only got my pocket money. Don't put a board like the A320 in, because ultimately, you know what's going to happen in 6 months' time or a year's time when Johnny does his upgrade and puts in his new processor for Christmas, and then Christmas Day or Boxing Day, you get that telephone call, my PC's blue screening. I'm getting blue screens of death. My PC's crashing. I can't play games. I'm getting lag spikes. It's then going to be down to you to turn around and say, well, yeah, you remember at the beginning when we spec this out and you had that budget, your motherboard is something we cheaped out on. So now for your upgrades, you're basically screwed. So you need a new motherboard. And potentially you need a new Windows key.
By the way, David Aikens had that off.
Did he? David Aikens wants it.
Thanks. You tap put him off.
David Aikens, there you go. There's your new motherboard. You can have that. So anyway, that is where we're at with that. So I would say if you're looking for a motherboard at the moment, or you're recommending to friends, family, etc., don't go cheap on a motherboard. Now that doesn't mean you can't go cheap-ish, but just don't go for the flat-out cheapest one you can get your hands on, because depending on what the use case scenario is, it could end up being a whole world of hurt. Now again, like I said, that motherboard's going to be brilliant for things like if you're in an office and you're just doing some really light tasks. 3200G in there with a graphics card, yeah, it's going to be absolutely fine. But if you start going a bit further up, maybe 8-core processor, yeah, it's gonna hurt, and it's gonna hurt hard. So the next one up is going to be, we're going to talk about graphics cards next, because I know you lot like talking about graphics cards, so we'll talk about that. Let's have a look, see what some of you are saying in the chat here. Patrick LaBelle, good deal on a Fractal Design Ion Plus, 80 plus Platinum on Newegg, Canada, 660 watt for $104. I have one, and really quiet, nice flexible cable for cable management. Good job. Jim Bean says, I've got that Mortar Max. The Mortar Max is actually a really good, really decent board. I like it.
Far away, aren't you?
I'm quite far away.
Quite far up.
Oh yeah, I am. I'm trying to go back through. Sorry. UK Grime says, I got an MSI B450 Tomahawk Max 2. I gave the Tomahawk boards a little bit of a trash in the B450s, and it wasn't through any malice. It was just at the time B450 Tomahawk was like, it got reviewed really well about a year before I did the review, and everybody was just watching the reviews and going, yeah, that's got the best VRMs, so clearly it is the best motherboard. And at the time it wasn't, but it did perform very well. So if performance is your number one thing, then yeah, it's absolutely fine. But what my whole thing was, that the board was overly hyped and it didn't have other modern features, such as, well, addressable RGB for one, which a lot of people got really upset about. So I was trying to highlight that. It isn't a bad board per se, but yeah. I like Tomahawk boards. B550 Tomahawk is possibly one of the best AMD boards you can buy right now, although it's a little bit quirky. Skystalker sent us a super chat of $6.99 Canadian dollars. Says, money well spent supporting Kath and Mike. Thank you, Sky. We appreciate that. And I still haven't got around to doing that monitor. I've got it. It's literally there in the pile. I'm still trying to look at my desk and working out where I'm going to mount it before I order my cables. So yes, thank you. We appreciate you. Where are we? What have I missed?
Bear was asking about RAM.
Oh, right, okay. Sorry, I've got it. Tatch says, I would get the B450 just for the overclocking support. Yeah, again, definitely a thing. There is,
Bizarrely, you can do frontside bucks or base clock overclocking on the A320, but whether or not the PCI Express bus would cope with it long term, I don't know. But you can squeeze a little bit more out of it, definitely. Nick Barnes says, question, how would you check if the A320 board is throttling back the PC? There's a really great app you can download, which is Hardware Info 64. You can run it, and while you're doing your testing, there is a segment in there which actually shows you, it comes up, it blips up to say when it's throttling. It's really handy. I started using it particularly for this test because I was using other stuff and it wasn't showing what I wanted to kind of get across to you guys, the viewers. So yeah, that is what I used. That's a really good one. Jim Beam says the PSU is the heart, the motherboard is the arteries, the CPU is the brain. Yeah, I guess it is. David Aiken, PS, I'll buy the A320 off you. You're welcome to it. I'll put it in the pile. I only bought it because I've got another build I need to do in a Micro ATX. I didn't want to take the Tomahawk Max, the Mortar Max out of the case it's in because I was going to sell that, but I might end up doing it anyway, regardless. Bauer says, hi Mike, any opinion on Tech Deals advocating 32 to 64 gigs of RAM? I'm on 16 gig and all his videos keep saying I need to upgrade. God, where do I go with this one? Tech Deals is, I wouldn't say, it's not necessarily wrong, but they're, Kath doing the Tech Deals teeth at me, stop it. There are people that will future-proof a PC well beyond what the actual usable scale of the PC is. And also it's going to depend on the games you're playing. Some games will use a lot of RAM. And obviously the games that he is playing highlights the fact that you need more RAM. 32 gigs of RAM, I would say, is above the sweet spot. 16 gigs is pretty much the value for money sweet spot at the moment because of the pricing. If you can afford to go for 32, then I certainly would. For my own video editing rig, I have 32 gigs of RAM in there. But I do video editing, which is quite a memory intensive thing. If you're playing games and you don't have much installed on your Windows, then potentially you're not likely to go much over the 16 gigs in the majority of games. But like a lot of people out there at the moment, so if you've got your Steam library, you've got your EA one, I can't remember what it's called now, Origin, you've got Epic, maybe you've got Creative Cloud from Adobe, you've got all those other things in your taskbar all running in the background. They're all going to be gobbling into RAM, so by the time you've booted up Windows on its own, there's a strong chance even before you open up a tab in your browser, you're probably using 8 or more gigs of RAM. So in that particular instance, then your game has only got maybe somewhere between 6 to 8 gigs of RAM to actually run. So he's not entirely wrong, but it depends on your memory management for your system. So yeah, 32 gigs is going to become the norm very soon because applications are getting bigger, games are getting bigger, we're getting higher and higher resolutions, games are using more and more page file and what have you to send information through the CPU. Direct storage might alleviate that a little bit. But yeah, 32 gigs is nice if you can afford it. But I wouldn't say it is the de facto norm. There's still millions and millions of people who are building brand new PCs to this very day and are still just putting in 8 gigs of RAM. And they're happy with it. But yeah, it depends who you are, what your thoughts are, how much money you have, the rest of your system, etc., etc. I wouldn't go for a cheaper graphics card to get 32 gigs of RAM. I'd rather go for a better graphics card and have 16 gigs, if that makes sense, because that would be the better value for money.
I will sit tight. The beauty of PC is I can upgrade later.
Yes, yeah, it is. Yeah, you can upgrade later. Put in 16 gigs now, add another 16 gigs later when you've got the money, if you feel you need it. Rick says, my MSI A320 is running on an Athlon 220 GE. Yeah, I'll be honest with you, there's a PC I built for a local business which is running I think that's the MSI, yeah, that's A320-M Pro, I think. And that's running a 2200G. It's absolutely fine.
Greg's.
Yeah. James Brock says, thanks for the shout out, Mike. That's no problem.
Para says, good topic. You can go cheap on RAM, get the cheapest 3200 CL16 you can find. So little gain in the expensive sticks. Now, actually, that's something that I wasn't planning on picking up on. At the moment, RAM prices are a bit weird. We dipped and then it's starting to peak again a little bit. So RAM prices now are a little bit mad all over the place. So it's difficult to say that something like Corsair's LPX, which if you get the right stuff, yeah, it's fine. You can save a little bit of money there, and also you've got ballistics. They often quite cheap as well. And some of the kind of slightly more off-brand stuff, like obviously V-Color that we use, even some of the Thermaltake stuff, actually you can pick up quite cheap. You've now got HyperX RAM, or is it HyperX? Or Kingston's RAM, whatever they're calling it now. The Fury RAM, pretty good proposition, decent value for money. But yeah, if you want to go for RGB or you want to go for DDR4 3600 or even 4000, or you want to get lower latency, yeah, it's a very hard to measure improvement. You can do the memory test. Literally, a couple of systems, put in DDR4, leave it with XMP off, put XMP on, and then overclock it a little bit higher, and you won't notice the difference unless you're running benchmarks. You really won't. It doesn't make a great deal of difference. Arali says, my only minor upgrade will be 16 gig to 32 gig and probably either Black Friday or in the new year. Yeah, 16 gigs I think is fine. It's absolutely fine. Sorry. James Brock at Electrobuzz. Does he still employ that red-headed strumpet to drum up interest? A little bit unfair. No, I think he sacked her. Well, not sacked her. I think they agreed to part their ways. It wasn't working out. I actually do watch tech deals every now and then. I do find some of the stuff very interesting. I do find it sometimes a little bit too intense. Where are we? Piercio says, I heard about a new gen of motherboard coming out alongside faster RAM. Should I build a PC now or wait for the new gen MOBO and cheaper GPUs? That is the $24,000 million question. AM5, as we think is probably going to be, and the new, is it Alder Lake S from Intel, I would say is probably not going to be, I'd be amazed, well, Alder Lake S might come out before Christmas. AMD stuff I think is probably going to be mid next year, if we're lucky. I think DDR5 systems will be first from Intel. I think that's quite likely. So it depends how long you want to wait. You can keep on waiting and wait for the perfect time. It's like buying a house. The house market goes up and down, peaks and troughs all the time. And it's just trying to work out where in the trough or the peaks that you're trying to avoid or you're trying to buy. So there's never really a good time to buy a PC or to build a PC, because you'll always find... Sorry?
Or have a baby.
Yeah, there isn't. There's never a good time for it, really. It's just do it. Get it done, get it out of the way.
And have a baby.
You can regret it at your leisure, or you can turn around after and possibly say, oh, cool, that was... I dodged a bullet there. I managed to get my PC for a decent price, and now look at prices. They've skyrocketed. It's all about perspective. Like us, when we bought our house, we bought it at the tail end of a little bit of a recession, so we got a really good deal. But ultimately now, the house is worth what it's worth. If we sold it, we'd still have to buy another house, so you don't really get anywhere. And same with PCs.
Only if you have a spare house.
Yeah, if you've got a spare PC and you sell it off, it doesn't cost you anything or it doesn't mean anything to you, then potentially, yeah, you can get some money back on it. But ultimately, whatever you put into a PC, you're probably not going to get back. Yeah, so whatever you spend, it isn't a problem. Yeah, you can have a little bit of buyer's remorse as graphics card prices possibly drop, but then CPU prices could go up and RAM prices are definitely going to fluctuate with DDR5 coming out. So yeah, there isn't really a good time. Although I would say definitely go for a second-hand GPU, which actually is going to take me into the next segment very well. So thank you for that. Where are we?
Christopher Butt says, with DDR5 coming up, RAM supply and price will be all over the place. Yes, it certainly is, yeah. What we normally traditionally see when a new RAM comes out, so like when we went from DDR3 to DDR4, the early adopters paid the price for it. We went from what DDR3 kind of 1866 was probably about the kind of like the sweet spot, and then the DDR4 that came out was 2133 or 2400, and at the time it didn't really seem to be much better because there was a little bit more latency involved, and what you gained in frequency you lost in latency and vice versa. So also the chipsets weren't optimized, the RAM wasn't really optimized, so you're just going across a plateau. There wasn't really a massive jump, whereas if you waited and went from an older DDR3 system at 1866 and then bought a DDR4 system with 3200, then yeah, you noticed the difference. It was a tangible thing. At the same point, the new DDR4 is going to be expensive. DDR5 is going to be expensive when it comes out because you get the early adopter kind of premium taxes on it. And obviously manufacturers and distributors are going to start trying to clear out DDR4 to make way for DDR5, and obviously they didn't want to get stuck with a load of stock which they can't sell as people start to shun DDR4 to get to 5. So we're going to see prices dropping. I'd be very surprised if we didn't see it go down to kind of some of the previous lows of around about 25 to 30 pounds for an 8 gig stick. I see that being achievable quite easily. We're not a million miles off it now. We're kind of 35, 40 pounds per 8 gigs at the moment for normal stuff, and maybe a little bit more for RGB stuff. So yeah, I think we're probably going to see that. Gary says I should get a sidekick like Mitch on Kerry Holzman. Kath, you can be Mitch.
Flame can.
Flame would be Mitch. Flame's probably got... No, I'm not going to say it. I won't be rude.
It could be a red-haired.
Mark Point says, just never buy RAM at launch. No, it's always a big mistake. Muckless says, hello, it's been a while. It has. We missed you. Thanks for coming back. James Brock says, Tech Deals is also in Texas, so I hold that against him as well. I like Texas. I don't know why, but I don't know. I kind of... Yeah, I am drawn to Texas. There's some cool things that have come out of Texas. AMD for one. James Priscilla says, the last Black Friday was a joke, as was Prime Day. There are no great deals. They all have ploys to showcase the mediocre crap they're having trouble getting rid of off the shelves. Yeah, that is it. Ricky says, me sitting with DDR3. Hey, DDR3 is still fine. There's a lot of people who are still using DDR3 systems and they're rocking. Some of those Intel systems, like the, what was it, the 4000 series, 3000 series, even 2000 series, still gain really well. Alessa says, I already have 15 RAM kits. I don't need any more. That's a lot of RAM kits. You should get a job at Gamers Nexus. Muckless says, Mark Point, yeah, never buy any parts at launch. No, it's, yeah, it's very, very accurate statement there. Bauer says, Tech Deals has changed, I admit. First 2 years of videos concentrated on value, getting into PC gaming with the old Office PCs, etc. Now it's crypto and sponsors a bit too much. Yeah, that's always a problem with pretty much most tech channels, to be honest with you. We've been really lucky because, I say lucky, as I suppose we've kind of driven ourselves to it. I refuse point blank to go into the whole high-end gaming room.
Get offered stuff.
People, yeah, we do get offered stuff, and there's the sponsorships. We get offered sponsorships probably 3 or 4 a day, and it's got to the point where it's like just delete, 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 delete. Not interested. Especially like the software ones. God, who wants that?
And the high-end stuff.
Yeah, the high-end stuff is.
It's not us.
Even like people like Synology and Asus Store, who else? MSI, Zotac. They offer us this high-end stuff to review, and it's like it's not really our target audience. And I personally, for one,
I wouldn't buy it. I wouldn't spend my money on that.
Sometimes
I
they just
don't
send
feel it.
to us and we have
Yeah,
we
sometimes
have
it just appears at the door and they're like, oh, great, now I've got to review it.
But we've got to have to send it back.
But yeah, I send it back. But yeah, I think it's one of those things that you have to be in the niche that you enjoy and that you think that your audience appreciates. So we like doing like helpful tips and stuff, the how-to videos, even like basic stuff like how to install a cooler, because that's the kind of stuff I enjoy doing. I don't really want to be doing how to bend water cooling tubes. Yeah, it would be fun, but it's not something which I've got a real passion for. I've never experienced it. Yeah, it might be a real bunch of fun. And Aletta, from what she said, yeah, it sounds like it is actually really good fun and it's a very expressive art thing to do. But for me, it's just a hella expensive thing to do. So it's so far off my periphery vision that it's unlikely to ever happen. Unless someone turned around to me and said, Mike, we've got some water cooling stuff. We want an absolute imbecile to test it to see how easy it is to fit it all together. Do you want to do it? In which case I'll be like, okay, that makes sense because I've never done it before. How easy is it or how difficult is it? I would quite enjoy doing that, but I wouldn't go out and spend my own hard-earned money on a whole bunch of water cooling stuff because I know that I've got hundreds of coolers behind me which will do the job as well for less money, which I'm a tight sod, so I'm not going to spend money on it. Anyway, that's enough about me. Welly Bob says, how's the roof situation, Mike? Good news actually on that front. We had the builder round and he came around on Saturday morning in between jobs and had a look and he's patched it up a bit out there, so
Bodged it till we get it.
it's been bodged until we can get the roof replaced. It looks like we're going to have a whole new roof and gutter in, which we kind of expected anyway, so that is going to be expensive. Another thing I don't want to spend money on, I'd rather just get a bloody huge tarpaulin, chuck it over the top and be done for a couple of years until I need a new one. But you can't really do that.
Just put a I can't say it.
So that is that. Welly Bob says, I love expensive stuff, but I buy sensible because I'm not rich. Yeah, I don't disagree with that. Muckler says, if Zotac sends you a 3080, just say it got lost in the mail. To be honest with you, I did actually say that to... It was Zotac, wasn't it? Yeah, Zotac sent us a graphics card and they said, oh, we've had the tracking thing, you should have had it delivered. It's like, no, I haven't had no graphics card. And they were like, oh my God, where's it gone? And I emailed back about 5 minutes later saying, gotcha. Welly Bob's £5 says Mike's roof fund or a medium pizza. Thank you, Welly Bob. I do appreciate that. And actually, Welly Bob sent us a processor which I'm eternally grateful for. Thank you so much. And so Kath is making fantastic use of that. And actually, that processor you sent us allowed me to have the Ryzen 7 1700X available for me to do other testing and other videos. So some of you have probably seen the CPU cooler install videos which we've been doing this week. We did like 5 or 6 different videos on how to install coolers, which I feel are really beneficial to people out there learning. So thanks to Welly Bob and obviously others that contribute to the channel, you guys are helping me to make content to help others. So yeah, it's massively, massively appreciated.
Stuart wants to know how your double glazing's doing.
Stuart, how's your double glazing? Actually, funnily enough, I do need some double glazing done, Stuart. So yeah, if you're ever in this neck of the woods, we definitely need help there. We've been having issues with our double glazing. The house is falling apart. It really is falling apart bit by bit. But we get by. We get by. We move on. We do our thing, and
You've got our blinkers on.
yeah, we're just like la la la. It's all fine. Can't see anything. If you do kitchens and bathrooms as well, that would be really handy. Christopher Butt says, your last cooler video was great. Excellent detail for new builders, better than reading the manual. Oh, thank you. I've been doing it since the 80s, but could appreciate it. Thank you, Christopher. Yeah, you guys have been brilliant.
what those videos, obviously those videos are aimed at novices and the more experienced alike, because there's always things that we can all learn, and certainly from you guys commenting and having your own inputs. Yeah, the tips that you're putting in the comments are brilliant, because I'm getting other insights that I've not noticed or not used before. So it all goes towards building a bigger knowledge base, which hopefully then we can pass on to the other newbies to stop them making mistakes. And come on, how many of you out there have actually had AMD or an Intel processor stick to the cooler? We've all been there, haven't we? And we've all been at that panic state where you pulled the cooler off and the CPU's on the bottom, and you're like, I don't want to look at the pins. I can't look at the pins. And then it gets too much, and you're like, and you're getting all the angles, and you're getting up to a light. It's like, please let the pins be straight. And yeah, look, most of the time it doesn't do too much damage, but I have seen some horror stories, and I've experienced it myself, where I've bent pins where it's come out. And it's one of those things that hopefully I still make mistakes now. I'll be hand up, I make mistakes. I'm a human being. And
not getting another kin.
quite often I rush into things, or I'll undo a cooler and I'll think, oh crap, I should have heated that up first, or oh, I should have undone this first. But it happens. But at least you've got the knowledge in there, so should it happen at some point, you can learn from it. Stuart Cleary with €10. Thank you very much. And he's put towards Mike's new triple glazing. Wow. Actually, yeah, we saw about triple gate glazing, didn't we? Just after we got our windows done, they're like, oh, triple glazing's out. It's like, feck. We just spent a load of money on windows for the house, and now, oh, triple glazing's out. Excellent.
I still think that we haven't long had it done, but it's 17 years now, isn't it?
Muckless says the most problems I had ever in building a PC was when mounting the coolers. The more the better, Mike. Oh, thank you. That's,
There will be a few more.
there will be more, yeah. We did. I did a long form video, which covers the AM4 platform, from kind of installing the processor, the stock cooler, how to remove a stock cooler, how to remove a stuck stock cooler, then moving up to upgrades such as like the Snowman cooler, and then other more custom coolers with a different clip size. So, and also there's one for the Wraith Prism RGB. That'll be coming out soon as well. But
You've done the big one.
we've done the big one, so all the little segments will be coming out. So hopefully, if the video comes out and you get it in your feed and you're like, oh, I've seen that already, you possibly haven't, but you might have seen it in a slightly different guise, because we've split the videos down a bit. So yeah, don't just think I've double released them, because
There wasn't any water coolers.
yeah, we didn't do water cooling. I've left that for a letter. She can do that.
She's noticed that you didn't do any.
Yeah. Oh, where's that gone? O'Reilly says, yes, I've had probably 2 or 3 CPUs stick to the cooler in my life, and lucky the pins came out and the CPU survived. Yeah, it's always one of those things that you just pull the processor out and you can just feel. I think the worst one for that, for me, has been the AMD Wraith, the Stealth cooler. I think that has been the most problematic, and I think due to having so many problems and trying to work out in my head how to get around it, I think removing the back plate off the back, taking the screws out and actually physically removing the back plate so you can put a little bit of twist on the CPU cooler just to break that seal after maybe warming it up a little bit. I think that is possibly one of the most beneficial things that I've learned from using that sort of cooler. And now that the video's out, hopefully it'll get loads of views right up until the point of AM5, and we'll have to start all over again. Oh dear. Blake says, oops, CPU was stuck like super glue to the cooler. Yeah, it does happen. And actually, it's one thing I would say to all of you out there, newbies or experienced alike, don't use the stock paste on any CPU cooler, because generally it's junk. No, doesn't matter what manufacturer it is, generally the paste is junk. And it sets super, super hard. Especially the AMD stuff. What they put on there recently, I don't know what it is, but it literally sticks like shit to a blanket. It really does. Excuse my
language there, but there's no other way to describe it. It's horrendous stuff. So the first thing to do with your stock cooler, if you've got some, is scrape that paste off, stick on some MX4 or MX5. MX5 is actually really good, try that. Yeah, put it on instead, it's much, much better. Skystalker says, I hate it when that happens. Yeah, it's... Oh. It is one of the most expensive parts of your PC. And in some cases, obviously, if you've been struggling along with a slightly lower end GPU, your processor is the main PC part. And the fact that it's soldered to a CPU cooler when you're trying to take it out is so nerve-wracking. It really is.
Welly Bob said use your hairdryer.
I could use my hairdryer. It doesn't get a lot of use for anything else. Christopher Butt says, I yanked my first Ryzen out, stuck to the cooler. Yeah, all been there.
You do get offered hair curlers and stuff, don't you, as well?
Yeah.
To review.
Bauer says, if anyone is sick of GPU prices, I highly recommend the Xbox S series. Surprised me how well it runs some games. Yeah, the Xbox is always a good shout. You lack, obviously, some of the flexibility of the PC, but if it's just for gaming, I think it's actually a pretty good idea. Good old William Bodie says, sorry, didn't think you were online tonight, but Moin from North Germany.
Good old YouTube.
Good old YouTube and its algorithm, yes. William still not had the package turn up yet, sadly, but yeah. As soon as it does, I will let you know. John Grammaticus says, will a Vitro V5 cooler 5800X? Yes, it will. Vitro V5 is possibly, I would say, arguably one of the go-to coolers at the moment. Value for money wise and flexibility and the look of it, I don't think you can go too far wrong with that. Muckler says, from using cheap CPU paste and having so much trouble when changing the cooler, I had to go with Noctua myself. I feel that's best for me. Welly Bob says, Mike has the same haircut as me. I still own hair dryers. Yeah, but do you use your hair dryers for removing CPUs and also bending water cooling tubes? Rick says, I only use MX4 on my AMD CPUs. It has a much thinner consistency. Yeah, MX4 is really good stuff, genuinely is. MX5 is actually a little bit better. It's got a lot more kind of silicon in it, or at least it seems to have silicon in it. So we'll be doing a video on that soon, MX5. Astro says, have you done case mods? Not really. I've done a couple. I try and only do them where they're absolutely necessary. So with the Cooler Master, the Masterbox Lite 3.1, that one I had no choice. I had to mod the bejesus out of that thing. There was very little of it left when I actually sold it in the end. But yeah, it was, yeah, that was one that needed modding. I had no choice.
And that, what was that one with the holes in that we all had?
Oh yeah, the Q5, the Q300, oh no, the Antec 900, I did a mod on that as well.
And you painted it white.
I did.
Nice.
Yeah, it did look alright actually.
Except for you didn't do that side panel.
Kenny D says, I'm replacing my Vitro V5 with a Cougar 240mm AIO. Actually, Kenny, let us know what the difference is like. I would probably think the idle temps would be better with the 240mm, but at the high end, if you leave it long enough, I don't know if there'd be much difference. I find that with a lot of 240mm AIOs that the ambient temperatures and the kind of normal usage temps actually are better. But when you actually put it under a full load for an extended period, it kind of evens out towards the end. But they do look nice. Aletta says, the Xbox is a one-trick pony. I only game about 2% of the time. I need a PC to do more than waste time and game. Yeah, I don't think, unless there's a big change in the way the Xbox runs, if an Xbox gave you options to install Windows 10 on it and run Windows 10 as a Windows 10 machine, even as a virtual machine, I probably would get one. But I think as far as gaming wise, it's very rare that I sit down and actually play a game for an extended period. Muckless says, do you have a video trying different CPU paste? Yes, we did a live stream on it with live results. I'm not too sure what it was.
Was it keeping it?
Hey, the Trojan's in. It says, hi guys, don't go cheap unless it's a snowman, then it's okay. Yes, definitely. That is a very, very valid statement there. We like the old, we like the snowman. William Bodie says, had a customer today from England. He said the price from England to France in the tunnel was £750. Can it really be that high now? I don't know. I've never travelled. It used to be the tunnel, it was like about 35 quid.
Was it?
About 20 years ago. So inflation's obviously kicked in a little bit. John Sullivan, I'm not the one-trick pony, I'm a whole field of ponies. The guy from The Apprentice. Good one. Mark Point says, why would you buy an Xbox to put Windows on it? I would love to use an Xbox as a mini PC. I think that's the best way. What the hell is that?
Have you God noticed you in the Macklemore thrift shop video?
Swine. Yeah, the Xbox would make a great under PC kind of mini entertainment system. And I always like to have Windows 10 on anything like that. Taylor's with us, says, hello guys. Rick says that Snowman cooler is huge. It is actually. It's a decent cooler though. I do like the Snowman.
Can you sing it?
No. Right, so let's go into the last one of the mistakes. Now this isn't one I've made recently, this is just a mistake I've made in general. And I feel that it's something that potentially a lot of people are also doing, because at the moment we're all pretty much screwed when it comes to new graphics cards. So there are instances when you're building a PC, a cheapy PC, you might be tempted to get something like this, GeForce 1030. This is obviously interchangeable with kind of RX 550, that kind of thing, and other crap graphics cards. It's not great. You can play games. I've done a review on this, you've seen the footage probably. Most games somewhere in between 30 to 60 frames per second, best case scenario. Other games, Cyberpunk, basically unusable. This costs in the UK at the moment somewhere in the region of about £80. So when you're building a PC or you're speccing up a PC, obviously when you're trying to spec it up for someone, you generally tend to go with someone like PC Part Picker. You'll go in there, pick up your parts, boom, 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 go through. With the graphics card, I feel personally at the moment that putting something like this in is basically doing someone a disservice, because it isn't worth 80 quid. It genuinely isn't. £50, £60, kind of, I guess, as a very, very stopgap measure just to get you up and running. £80 and upwards, they're taking the piss. They really are. I bought it for about £80 at the time because we were...
Make the mistakes and so they don't have to.
Yeah. I made the mistake so you don't have to. And to be honest with you, these have sold like hotcakes. These are getting to the point of selling out because there's nothing else available. It's either super high-end cards, which are ridiculously inflated prices. You've got the things like the 6600 XT, which has just been released, which I don't understand at all. The 6600 XT, yes, it fills a place in the market. And if you need a graphics card, then hey, yeah, get one. Anyway, that's a different story. So £80 roughly for a brand new card. Obviously, you've got a warranty with it. It's got 2 gigs of RAM, which is rubbish. I think it's got 2 gigs. Has it got 2? Yeah, 2 gigs GDR5. So clearly this is going to be not great. So do you spend a little bit of extra money and get something which is inherently much, much better? So at the other end of the spectrum, you've got this. This is the EVGA GeForce GTX 1060 SC. This is the 3 gig version. So we've only got an extra gig of RAM, but we have got a hugely, hugely, hugely different performance on this card. So the 1060 3 gig, you can pick these up on the used market at the moment for, if you're lucky, £80 or so. If you're less lucky, somewhere between £80 to £120. So at the top end of the price, I would say it's possibly not worth getting. At the kind of £80 to £100 mark, the difference between this at £80 and the difference between this at £80 is night and day. It genuinely is. There's not even the same ballpark for gaming. This will play pretty much all games, including AAA games, at what I would consider playable frame rates. Yes, you are going to have to drop some of the fancy features, maybe turn down, possibly kind of, you're obviously not going to be running on ultra, but 1080p, medium, high settings, yeah, this is going to do it absolutely fine. Games like Rocket League, all your esports titles, so yeah, Rocket League, CSGO, Valorant, what's the other one? Can't think of the thing now. Fortnite, all that kind of stuff, yeah, it's going to run absolutely fine. It actually does run quite well, which I was surprised. Left 4 Dead, the new Left 4 Dead, which is currently out, runs absolutely fine. Cyberpunk, it struggles with, playable, lower resolutions obviously. Better output on the back as well, so you've got DVI-D, you've got HDMI, and you've got a couple of display ports as well, whereas with this you're limited to one of each, I think. So yeah, definitely a much better card, much better cooling. You can overclock these as well pretty heavily.
Mark points of.
Thanks Mark, thanks for stopping. So yeah, a much better card for the sake of an extra couple of quid. So this takes me back now very, very nicely to the whole power supply thing. So you're building a gaming PC for somebody and you get to the point where you're up to your limit on your budget. So do you go with that or that? You tell me, let me know in the chat what you think. Be honest, I know that some of you are going to have a bias towards a certain thing anyway, power supply wise, but realistically, if you're at a fixed budget, you literally cannot swing anything else, so then you've got the choice between this being 80 quid plus this, which is about £20 dearer, or do you save £20, get the cheaper Cylon power supply and go with the 1060 3 gig, which is second hand, but is going to cost you somewhere in the region between either the same or 20 quid more.
Vanessa's got it as a doorstop.
Honestly, I would, every single time I would go with this over that. Now, if obviously there's ways in the budget that you can swing something else where you can have that and that, yes, perfect world situation, that is what you should do. But in the world of limited funds, which, hey, we've had a rocky 18 months, haven't we? A lot of people out of work, losing hours at work, furloughed, job retention schemes, all that kind of stuff. People ain't got much money. So would you go for the better gaming experience overall and a potentially more risky power supply, but certainly a managed risk? Or would you go for the better power supply and a crap graphics card? My money is on this all day long. Let's have a look, see what you guys are thinking. David Thompson says, I've got a GTX 1063 gig. Welly Bob says 1060 and whatever cheap PSU that will power every time for a gamer. Kenny D says GTX 1060 and a Cylon. I'm a Coconut says, building a system with a 1030 in it, even a cheap PSU will be fine. Yep, there is that to it, definitely. Mark Berry's 1060 in a Cylon. Nick Barnes 1060 because easier to replace PSU. Yep, yeah. The other side of it as well, if you're fixed budget but you potentially got more money coming, you can cheap out on stuff like a power supply because essentially it is replaceable. It's going to be arguably one of the least expensive parts of your build if you cheap out on it. Whereas your graphics card is going to be at least £100 thereabouts. Your graphics, your power supply, your motherboard hopefully is going to be in the kind of £60 to £100 region. Your GPU, your CPU is going to be likely to be in and around the £100 mark or more. Case wise, probably 60 to 100. So power supply is kind of, I would definitely consider as being one of those parts which is kind of replaceable. And even if you just keep it as a spare, put in a decent one when you can afford it, it's going to be a lot easier to keep a power supply as a spare for the limited investment of like 30 quid or something, 35 quid maybe, over an 80 quid graphics card, which is going to be effectively useless as it is currently in my hands. Let's see what else you've got. So, Matthew Day says the GTX 960 from CEX at 90 quid blows the bloody doors off a GT 1030. Yep, all of those sorts of things. CEX is actually a really good option for some reasonably priced graphics cards at the moment for us in the UK. Christopher Butt says, been buying used parts for decades. Used GPU is iffy because you don't know what life they've had. Yeah, there is that to it. Matthew Barton says, would you go for single channel RAM to save a few quid and not get the better PSU and GPU? I think for most Ryzen systems, I think going single channel is going to be very detrimental to system performance. I think single channel is possibly where I would think about drawing the line. Although, if you're looking at a 16 gig system and maybe you wanted to put an 8 and then another 8 later, it's a situation which is remediable. Is that even a word? No, it's probably not. You can fix it. So, yeah, potentially. Aletta says, I don't compromise on PC parts, give me all the high-end stuff. In a perfect world, that would be a great thing. I'm a Coconut says, Aerocore are decent enough parts. I can't fault their stuff. For a low-end system, they're absolutely fine. Yeah, I'm tempted to agree. I haven't had... I think I had one power supply which was dead on arrival. I think.
Yeah, I think we did.
I think we did send one back.
Funny taxes then, didn't we?
Yeah, because it was on a crossover between the two tax years, and it was like, oh god. And I bought like 2 or 3 of them, so yeah, it was confusing. But other than that, I've not had any problem. James Miscellaneous says, I would take option C, APU, and wait for a joke of a video card market to fix. But I really don't even believe in doing a placeholder build unless you need a PC now. Waiting always gives you more options. This is true. Actually, I'm going to be a bit controversial now, and I would say that APUs are actually potentially a bigger waste of money than anything else. I would probably go with a dedicated CPU and a GT 1030 than I would an APU. And as someone who's bought lots of APUs, if you're building a system for gaming, and specifically gaming, I would avoid an APU like the plague. I generally would. The 3400G is, I would say, massively underpowered in terms of gaming prowess. So the only way to resurrect that is to put a graphics card in. And for how much it costs and for the downsides of things like you've only got 8 PCI Express lanes, you've only got 4 cores, 8 threads, I would rather get a Ryzen 5 3600 and just use anything that I can get my hands on rather than buying an APU. I think APUs they've got a marketplace, but for gamers, I don't think it's the right choice. For standalone PCs or for like offices, businesses who might need a little bit of video acceleration, they make a lot of sense. And I appreciate that in some regions you have no choice because this all is available and they're actually better priced than their kind of equivalent CPUs on the market. So I totally understand that. For anyone who's watching this from outside of kind of the UK or the US or Canada or whatever, where you don't have the option, then I totally understand you getting one. And I'm not disrespecting that. I'm just saying for us here in the UK specifically, APUs are really expensive for what they are. So I would definitely, well, a good case in point, the 5600G versus the 5600X. That's a very good example where you're probably better off buying just a very, very cheap crap graphics card like a GT 710 or something, secondhand for like 10, 15 pounds, and waiting until you can get a graphics card rather than go with the APU, because the APU section you can't remove and you won't ever regain the performance between that processor and what it is kind of supposed to be. Anyway, that's just my opinion, and of course everyone is welcome to their own. O'Reilly says, I've always avoided APU, iGPU, etc. It is very much, yeah, it's one of those things. There's definitely a market that it caters for. But yeah, Matthew Day says there, APU is for an appliance build. Yeah, exactly. O'Reilly says, a separate CPU and GPU is a must for gaming. Yeah, definitely. Bauer says, I had a 3200G and it felt like a dead weight, sold it, and for what I grabbed, a Ryzen 5 1600 and R9 2800, much greater performance. Yeah, that essentially sums up my point exactly. And it's not rocket science. It's not like I'm preaching some newfangled technology. It's just financial sense. But again, I understand that they do feel a certain need in the market at times. Sorry. Sorry. Silence. Just reading your comments there. Oh, William, yeah. I'd imagine it's, if anything, it's probably stuck in... what's the thing? Customs.
No, it's gone through customs.
Oh, is it?
It says the shipment has been processed in the delivery department. So I'm assuming, and that was on the 12th, so I'm assuming they don't work weekends and it might come Monday.
We'll have a look. Where are we? John says that the 6600 XT Nitro Plus has 3 BIOSes on it. Wow. So what's that? A mining BIOS, a normal BIOS, and a turbo BIOS. Wow. Muckless says, just from experience, if you're not using APUs, you need a cheap graphics card to swap all the time. Kenny D, and I just bought a 3200G for my little bro. It's like I said, it fits a need. I've got the 3400G, I've got a 3000G in the little mini PC in the front room, which very rarely gets used these days. And for that, it's an ITX build, so I can't put a graphics card in it. So obviously, APU is an absolute must in that build. I can't do anything else but that, and it suits it. But like Matthew Day said, yes, APUs really, I guess they're more of an appliance build. And if you can pick up a cheap APU, then of course that changes it altogether. If you can pick it up cheaply, then yeah, it makes a ton of sense to actually buy one.
You picked it up cheap and chucked it on the floor.
I picked it up cheap and then threw it on the floor and then Kath bent the pins in straight again.
Bent them straight.
Bent them straight. Matthew Day says, on the Intel side, all non-F CPU are really APU with no disadvantage. The F model just deletes the iGPU and saves you a little money. Yeah, if Intel sold all of their CPUs as being unlocked and having decent RAM speed options, I think they'd be killing it. I really do. Even though they don't perform just as well, but yeah, this. People keep on saying to me, Mike, you're going to do an Intel video. You're going to do an Intel video, and I can't do it. I can't knowingly buy an Intel processor and an Intel motherboard knowing that I'm not going to be able to overclock, I'm not going to be able to do much with the RAM speed, and essentially the CPU is as fast as it's going to be, and that's it. It's only going to degrade, if anything. Whereas at least with the AMD stuff, 99% of it you can overclock. So if it gets to the point where, oh, I'm just shy of being able to meet the specs for this game, I'll overclock it for a bit, and then after I'm finished I'll put it back. With Intel you can't do that, and I think it's a real shame. I think it's one of the major plus sides of the Intel platform is the fact it is an Intel platform, so inherently it's going to be ridiculously stable and massively compatible with pretty much everything, but it's kind of, you got handcuffs on, so you can't tweak around, you can't tinker with stuff unless you spend ridiculous money on like a Z-class board, which doesn't make any sense. Patrick LaBelle says, I'm better at Horizon Chase Turbo on my 2400G than on my 3950. Horizon Chase Turbo, I love that game. That is, I was going to stream that. If you've not seen it before, it was free. I think it might still be on Epic. It's essentially kind of like Chase HQ and Outrun put together into a modern setting. Absolutely brilliant. I'm a Coconut says, if you want a gaming PC, GeForce Now / Stadia might give you a better experience than overpriced low-end GPU. That could be an argument to hold out with an APU, and when Bitcoin crashes, get a GPU. I think GeForce Now is one of those things which I've tried in the past and I've never thought much of it. And to buy a subscription seems really counterintuitive, but I think for some people it probably is the answer. Mark Berry says, my son had my old Ryzen 5 2600 and my RX 570 as he's the gamer, and I've just got a 3400G as I just watch stuff on YouTube. Yeah, 3400G and all those APUs for, like Matthew said, appliance type PCs, absolutely perfect. You can't go wrong. William Bodie says, don't anybody first look for that they are going to use the PC for new games or older games? Yeah, that definitely comes into it. Yeah, that is, when I'm professing or whatever, giving you my opinion, obviously my opinion comes from my own use case scenarios and what I'm used to doing. So obviously your experiences and your needs and what you want to do with a PC is probably going to be completely different from what I want to do. So obviously my real kind of bias is towards video editing and trying to edit videos. So that's kind of always at the back of my mind. I do play games, but it's not paramount. So if like, for instance, actually my video editing PC, I've literally just taken my 5700 XT out of my main rig because the latest update to Adobe Premiere absolutely sucks on AMD cards. So I've had to put in a 1070, which is a considerably worse card for gaming, but a much better video card for editing. So because I do more editing than I do gaming, that is why I've switched over. So other people are going to have similar things where maybe they're playing older games, retro games, and they work particularly well on a type of system, whether it's AMD or NVIDIA. Everyone's got their own kind of bias or what they want to lean towards on how their system's going to run.
Paul Bakewell.
Paul Bakewell. Paul Bakewell, Paul Bakewell, Paul Bakewell. I can't even see it. Where is Paul? Oh, yeah. Paul Bakewell, question. Microsoft Windows 365 service, good idea or not for home users? No, can't. Windows 365 service. Does it make sense? That is a tough one. For us here personally, we have a Microsoft 365 service. So I've got the family service, which has got 5 users, and each of the 5 users can have 5 installs on devices. So for me personally, I've got that PC, this PC, that PC, the one in the front room as well. So I've got at least 4 PCs which I access email on. So that's my account. Cav's PC has got Office on it for emails and work, etc. George's PC's got Office on it. So if we were to buy individual kind of Office 2019 licenses for each PC, even if we got them from somewhere like Premium CD Keys where it's going to cost 15 quid a head, yes, it is a perpetual license, but if you upgrade, then potentially you lose your key. So it's not a retail key, so you don't kind of keep it with your account. It's not attached to your Microsoft account. So if we do it that way, so my 4 PCs, if I change components on them, that's going to cost me an install on each one, which is actually the reason why I did swap over from using Premium CD Keys for my individual rigs to a Microsoft 365 account, because for £40 a year, well, actually it's £40 for 15 months subscription on Amazon, and we also got antivirus in that as well, which you can choose to install or not. So for me, for £40 to have Office fully up to date and able to transfer it from PC to PC whenever I want, that is the cost of 2.5 licenses from Premium CD Keys at 15 quid a head. And being that I was normally replacing a key on a machine every kind of few months or so, it actually makes more financial sense to go for Office 365. If you've got a standalone PC and you very rarely change any components or never do a fresh install, yeah, get a Office 2019 license and just go with that. And then if you need to replace it, then just install it again. It's not hassle really. It's time consuming, but regardless, you might have to get a new key. I personally fully endorse using a 365 account. You get 1 terabyte of storage per user as well. So if you're using OneDrive, which if you want to, you can do, it's entirely up to you, but 5 terabytes of storage. If you're a family member or you've got a family and there's a few different people using a PC and you may be thinking about getting a NAS, for 40 quid a year for Office 365 for 5 users on 5 machines, plus 5 terabytes of storage, it starts to look like a much more attractive proposition. As a single individual user, possibly not so much, unless your needs are similar to mine, where you've got multiple PCs and you're swapping stuff out all the time. So hopefully that answers your question. I probably ranted on a little bit about that, but it's a difficult one. Everyone's different. Everyone has different needs. So that is why, yeah, Office 365 subscription for certain people is the ideal solution. For other people, a simple Premium CD Keys Office 2019 key is all they need. Ordinary Dude says, I've run 3400G for some time until now, decided to dabble in video editing, so now I use a 3700X and GTX 1070 Fe. If I wasn't going to do that, I would still use an APU. If APU does what you need it to, it makes a ton of sense, it really does. And it means you don't have to buy an expensive graphics card, because you can play games. James Messina says, protesting everyone will start using LibreOffice. I've got to be honest with you, I've tried using LibreOffice on so many occasions, it's ridiculous. And I've never, ever been entirely satisfied with it. But I appreciate that there's a lot of people out there that are, so like I said, everyone's use case scenarios are different. My way is not right, your way is not wrong, your way is not right, and I'm not wrong. It's just personal preference. Stuart Cleary says, great advice, Mike, cheers. No worries. Rick says, I switched from Microsoft Office to LibreOffice. I'm interested actually, for those of you that are using LibreOffice instead of Microsoft Office, what do you use for email? Because for me, that is the thing.
And because we share emails.
Yeah. And we are using the same email account in Outlook. Excuse me. I think Outlook is the one which actually is the main reason, yeah.
I'm a Coconut says Gmail. Yeah, Gmail's a valid alternative. If I don't know, I suppose I could integrate the Mike's Unboxing email into Gmail. I don't know. There's just something about Outlook. So I wouldn't say it's more professional because you can obviously be a professional and use Gmail. But there's something about Outlook where it just
It's because we've got old. And
it feels more organised and it's something we're used to. Excuse me. Gaff, can you get me a alcoholic beverage from the fridge, please?
Do you want some ass?
Yeah, can I have some green ass, please?
I don't know if there is one in the fridge.
Cheers, Aletta. She said BRB.
It's not been in the fridge.
Oh dear.
Do you want a glass?
No, it'll be alright. Just need something to get rid of frog out my throat. Ordinary Dude says I used mail-based emails, so it's available from everywhere. David Thompson, does the 365 give you Windows keys too? Sadly not. Welly Bob says Outlook is a semi-professional tool, better if you're used to it. And cheers everybody. We'll be enjoying some some ass pilsner. Sorry, I forgot the autofocus was on. Oh god, I nearly fell off the stool. Is that focusing? That was my other expensive mistake this week, the Sony ZV-E10, which I bought specifically because the autofocus on the Lumix camera is rubbish. It turns out that the camera is shit, so I sent it back. Right, I'm gonna cough loudly. Bear with me a second. I'll turn my mic off. That's better. Who needs a cough switch? Switch.
Oh.
Welly Bob says, "Get your ass out." Yes. Shake your ass in front of the camera. Not too much because it'll foam. Cheers, everybody. Well, that's better. La, 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 la. Mark Barry says, "Cheers, Mike. Enjoy." Thank you. Fred Brown says, "Mike, you know where to get Windows Pro 10 keys?" Yes. premiumcdkeys.com/Mike's Unboxing. Best prices on the internet for legit keys. Stuart Cleary says, "Great to see a beer in your hand on a Saturday night." James Brock says, "Where's Bob's dancing dog?" Yeah. Oh. The autofocus has gone again because it's picked up on the dog. There it is. There's the dog Bob. The reason why is because this was here because we had the new camera and I was trying to replicate the problems that we experienced with the old camera. And the Bob dog's in focus. Olfie. Yeah, it's got me now, I think. Who's in focus?
It's on your face, the square.
Is it? Autofocus. One day, I will get the hang of using cameras. It's weird because... Oh, thanks, Patrick. See you later. When we... Oh, Fred Brown. Mike, please make a link for that, will you please? Kath will do it for you now. It's a https://premiumcdkeys.com/Mike's Unboxing, discount code Mike's Unboxing. And you get 7.5% off of the already ridiculously cheap keys. Actually, where is Ugly Bob? He's disappeared. Is he doing actual things? Yeah, this dog, when we did it in the other video, it does... Actually, no, I better not even turn it on. We were listening to this in the stream, and I could not understand the music that was coming out of it. It plays music when it dances and it shakes its butt.
Twerking.
Actually, if I turn off the microphone, I can do it, can't I?
Sorry, Bob.
Have you got the speaker on?
Yeah, I'll turn it back on then. Oops. Anyway, sorry about that, Bob. Alfie went for a flyer. But yeah, we played it and I couldn't understand. I didn't know any of the tunes on there. And almost immediately after we finished the stream, my email was going off like crazy. Boom, 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 boom. Copyright strike, copyright strike, copyright strike. Turns out it's like Justin Bieber was one of the tunes. Another one was like some Japanese band I'd never heard of. And yeah, there's various musical things on there which are all copyrighted to oh hell. So yeah. Cheers, Alf. Stuart Cleary says, is Uggs okay? I don't know, I hope so. Tristan G says, oh no, twerk dog puppet. I know. James Brock says Ava Max. It might have been on there, I don't know. Yeah, so it was... Letter says, I suck at using cameras, but I'm an expert at taking pics of my thumb. I love that. There's a meme somewhere of some woman, and she's got a phone or camera, and it's got the screen pointing towards her. So she's literally like taking a picture like that, but the camera's pointing at her. Brilliant. Fred Brown says, thanks, Mike. I see the link down below now. Yeah, there you go. Links down below. Muckless says, have a good night all. Mike, for Prime Minister? Oh, God. Dear Lord. I do not want that job. Corbin Review YouTuber. That sounds like a YouTube channel if I ever heard one. How you doing? Chris Rabutt says, use Gmail G Suite for business for years. Highly recommend. Yeah, I might have to... one day I might have to look at G Suite. I know there's a lot of people that do use it. I think it's because... at the moment, it's only me and Kath that really use it, so it's relatively manageable. Most of the stuff that we've got that we need is backed up on the NAS or on each PC. There's something we definitely need to look at. The whole NAS situation, really, we need to make a decision one way or the other, whether we go cloud-based or whether we do NAS and cloud or just NAS.
Don't like cloud.
I don't like cloud storage personally, to some extent. It does have its uses and it is handy, but my concern is the security side of it, and especially when it comes down to the stuff that Apple are sort of discussing at the moment about being able to look at your pictures and use digital thumbnail to see if they are known to be dodgy images, and it's kind of like, yeah, that is good for fighting against crimes against children, etc., which I wholeheartedly support. But what concerns me is when they then turn that technology into other areas. So if you're saying stuff about something which the mainstream do not approve of, or you have an opinion, then yeah, who are they going to turn the lens on then? That is the concern. Welly Bob says, is the £800 refund going into the new kitten purchase? Would you cut it out with that kitten's nonsense? No.
We have 3 quite old cats now, so we need to wait.
Yeah, we do have some old cats, so one of them might venture off into the big kitty litter in the sky at some point.
Not kitty litter. Kitty cat tree in the sky. Hey, mate.
Matthew Day brings up a good point actually. Yeah, we don't get symmetric upload and download, so cloud stuff is generally quite slow. For those of you lucky people in the Americas, yeah, you do get the benefits there. It's Maisie, Maisie the cat. Actually, if I hide out of the way, see if it'll focus on her. Is it focused on her?
Don't know, she won't look.
Maisie!
Hey, Mamie.
No idea. Oh, I think it might have done a little bit. Who knows?
Stuart Cleary at Ugly Bob. Where are you? Where's Bob?
I think he's passed out.
I'm concerned. I bet he's been on this sauce all day and he's just... Bless him. He does work hard, so he deserves it.
Oh, she is my baby lion.
That is our baby lion.
Flame is our baby tiger. And Daisy is our baby.
Wow. Riley's going to hit hay as well, might all. And actually, I think that's probably a good time for us. I've just realised we've gone 25 minutes over our allotted 2 hours time. Oh crap! Go tangled up in my own cables again. Shouldn't drink beer. It's bad for me. So thank you all very much for tuning in tonight. Hopefully, well, you've enjoyed the witterings of a crazy bold Bristolian. Thanks to Cosmic Space Muffin. Thank you for sending us the ass. Very much enjoyable. Also, thank you to Welly Bob for the Ryzen 5 2600.
Thank you.
William Bodie, thank you for your incoming gifts. A preemptive thank you.
We will let you know once received.
Don't forget, all of you, if you haven't been over to Kath's channel yet, please do visit ShopSmart and drop a like and subscribe and even follow on Facebook if you are one of those Facebooker thing people. We would appreciate that greatly. If you haven't dropped a like on the video, please feel free to do so now. But I think that's going to wrap this one up. Drink beer, it is... Tristan G, drink beer, Mike, it is good for you, keeps one sane. I would disagree with the... I would disagree with the sanity thing if you'd ever seen my daughter after she's been out on the Raz. She doesn't handle it particularly well. Anyway, I've been Mike. This is Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To. And... what's the next bit? Oh yeah. I can't remember. What do I say here, Kath? Help me out. Yeah, I've been Mike. This is Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and hopefully we'll catch you in the very next video. Thanks for watching, and thank you all for joining us on the stream. See you later.